Right, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for this session, Innovating for Social Impact. It's great to see all of you here and also those of you joining us online. Thank you for being here. My name is Mina Al-Arabi. I am the editor-in-chief of The National based in Abu Dhabi, and I am also a member of the Young Global Leaders community. I'm delighted to be moderating this session. The world is going through major changes, but also some upheaval, of course. Here in this region, much of this morning has been actually about terrible war ongoing in Gaza and trying to find solutions for the conflicts that we witness here. But also there's the excitement of the green energy transition, there is the technological revolution that we are seeing, economic changes. So it's a mixed bag, really. And this is an opportunity for us to really have a conversation about what this means on the ground, societal changes, but also innovation and how we can hopefully do a better job as humans with this world that we have. So this idea of societal transitions is also linked to change makers. Who are the change makers? And here really we are joined by three change makers who think about these issues and also ensuring that it is inclusive, that what we do is inclusive. And the world, again, had the opportunity to do better with the Sustainable Development Goals, whose deadline isn't by 2030. Unfortunately, all indicators are we will not meet any of the 17 SDG goals as a world. However, different countries have done progress on different goals. And this idea of, well, what do we do to make sure that we do not miss these goals like we did with the Millennium Goals, for those who remember that era. So we are online. The hashtag is Special Meeting 24 for those who would like to comment online. And we will be coming to those of you here with us in the session for questions later on. So please be prepared to pose your questions. I'm delighted that with me, and I'll start from the furthest to my left, Lynn Malkawi, who's founder and director of Wasil for Awareness and Education in Jordan. And she is also a member of the Global Shaper community. We also have Anne-Laure Malazad, thank you, who is a member of the Young Global Leader community. She is a partner head of Europe, Middle East, and Africa Social Impact Practice at Bain & Company. And we have right to my immediate left, May Al-Muzaini, who is a founder and chief executive officer of the Arab Institute for Women's Empowerment, NUSF, here in Saudi Arabia. So thank you. I want to ask each of you the same question as we kick off, really. And that is, what do you see as the most important, and I know it's always a confluence of things, but the most important driver for positive social change in the region, and how can we support it? So May, I want to start with you.
Thanks, Mina. It's great to be here. I would say for the MENA region, one aspect that happened globally, of course, but affected the MENA region in a positive way, some sort, I would say COVID. The pandemic has created a financial setback, of course, but it also created a reflection on so many people. What do they want to do after COVID? How are they going to expand? A lot of people left jobs, there's economic setbacks, there's all of that, but also it created a social innovation kind of space for people who wanted to be different after COVID. That's for the MENA region. And for Saudi Arabia, I would say the best social change that has happened in our country would be Vision 2030. It's a complete epic reform plan for the Saudis, for the economy, for individuals that created that space for us to improve our lives. And in particular, of course, women and the youth. And so innovation has spurred so much. And I remember the Crown Prince mentioning that Saudi Arabia cannot thrive by itself if its neighboring countries are not thriving. So we think that this is a roadmap for our country, but can be emulated in the countries near us or in the Arab world.
Great. And just to pick up on the point of Vision 2030 and what you said, this idea that it was a direction that was given and then people can innovate and fit into this wider vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. And not only that, you know, it's about, it focuses on a thriving economy, an ambitious nation, and a vibrant society. And with all of these three pillars come sub-pillars to include that. A lot of it includes women empowerment, it includes youth engagement, it includes innovation, it includes diversifying from the economy. So there's a lot of, tells you how, what to do. And people have been following it effortlessly, seamlessly. So it's been going really well.
So, Anne-Laure, I want to turn to you. The same question, most important driver for positive social change that you're seeing in the region and how we can continue to support it.
Thank you, Mina. And I really look forward to the discussion because I see many people in the audience that are probably even bigger experts than I am at this topic. So looking forward to that. I totally agree with what May said. For me, though, I think looking at it from the other side is we have something in the Middle East that other regions don't have. We have the highest number of youth, highest percentage of youth in the world. We often have a narrative around the region and no, we don't have enough of something. This is something we have plenty of. And so for me, the hope is around, you know, the enthusiasm of youth and how to harness that for change, because they have been a massive driver of change the last few years. The beauty of our youth as well is most of the data suggests that they're optimistic and positive about the future. There's a recent analysis that was done by Vice that showed that Arab Gen Zers, over half of them, are optimistic about their country. And this was 20%, I think, above the global average. So it shows you the distinction there. And additional studies show that they're not scared of the changes taking place around AI, around some of these different shifts, which in many other countries, perhaps, there's more questions on. So I think the biggest questions for all of us to continue having youth drive social change will be, how do we make sure we maintain that hope to ensure that they don't lose hope? Because I think in the current context, it's easy sometimes to get discouraged, you know, and there's many reasons for that. But also, how do we create an ecosystem that can continue to help them and sustain them on their change journey? Because enthusiasm is one thing, but you need other drivers to help them actually make that change a reality.
Thank you, Anne-Laure. And just to your point about that optimism, that's across all countries, it's found? Does it, I mean, there must be varieties.
There are varieties, and I think there are countries where the youth generally would like to move and potentially sees, you know, higher potential. But on average, they're more optimistic than other regions of the world.
That's great. Okay, so Dean, over to you. So same question, what is the most important driver for positive social change that you see at the moment? What can we do to support it?
All right, thank you, Mina. It's a pleasure being here with all of you today. By far, education. Education is, at an early stage, the biggest driver, in my opinion. Just to give context on social innovation and social impact, it leads to 7% of the global GDP. It's created 10 million enterprises globally, 2 trillion in annual revenue, and 200 million jobs. So if we are talking about this, if we are wanting to tackle one of the biggest problems that youth face today, which is unemployment, we need to start educating them. We need to start teaching them how to create businesses, how to create social impact initiatives at an early age.
Great, thank you. And so when you give those statistics for education, that's something that seems sensible, that, you know, who could go against education, so to speak. What have you found is, and you can talk to Jordan's example, what do you find are the enablers for that? Is this about the education system? What's the ecosystem that's required to ensure that education stays that focal point?
I think that social innovation, social enterprises, it's a new concept. So this needs to be a partnership between the public sector and the private sector with the experience that have launched this. Also, when we're talking about investing in human capital education, it's about collaboration by people with diverse perspectives to address problems that go beyond borders. So I believe that the education system needs to definitely include methodologies that teach youth this at an early age.
Thank you. Okay, Lena, I want to stay with you because I do want to talk about the fact that there is this terrible ongoing war and occupation in Palestine. We just heard from the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, on stage moments ago, calling this the worst crisis in the Middle East since 1948. And I think for many people in the region, kind of feels, even if we weren't around in 1948, from everything that we've heard and we've learned, that this is such a seminal and terrible moment for many people. So when we talk about innovating for good, when we talk about social impact, how do we enable people at a time like this, and what can be done? Also, when we talk about young people, we talk about people in Palestine, what can be done?
Absolutely. So first of all, the situation that's happening in Gaza, it's not limited to a certain region or to a certain type of people. This is the biggest humanitarian crisis that my generation has seen. We're talking about 35,000 people that have been killed. We're talking about 14,500 women and children. So this is a very, very big percentage. We're talking about 77,000 people injured, 8,000 people missing. The disregard of human life has left beating hearts in the region hopeless. We're sitting here enjoying our three-course meals while education, which we were just talking about, is under attack. We have 90% of school buildings have been destroyed and no university left standing. So we're talking about social impact, we're talking about innovation, but the pillars, the infrastructure for this in that part have been completely destroyed. We're talking about hospitals. 20 out of 22 hospitals have been destroyed. So in addition to that, economically for the region, there's a huge effect. Investors have pulled out because this is considered a political risk. We're talking about insurance companies have raised prices on shipping. We're talking about tourism has affected the entire region, especially Jordan. Ryanair just canceled all flights to and from Jordan. So one of the things that we need to take action on immediately now is promote an immediate ceasefire and then work collectively as nations across the world to build back better and focus on how we can mitigate the mental health risks that the next generation of youth have been accustomed to.
It's been incredible to see some of the stories coming out from Gaza, where actually amidst all this despair, people also innovating and coming up with solutions where people have been pulling in together. There was this incredible story of a 15-year-old boy who was able to take solar panels from buildings that were destroyed and actually use them to charge phones, something that we think is now an essential human right for us to maintain connectivity. And so this idea is, as we think about social innovation, social impact, everything you said, Lynn, is so important, but also we look to people like you, all three of you, to think, okay, well, despite the despair, we're journalists and we deal with all the cynical and terrible headlines, but we also have to think how we can make positive change, how we can make that impact. So I want to ask you about that. As difficult as it is to look to, making a better future, what does it take? What should people be thinking about, working towards?
Well, I mean, it should be looking towards initiatives like the Shapers have done. So there's Connect Palestine, Shaper Aid. What the region now needs is to be able to build back better. And it's initiatives like Connect Palestine, where we're supporting our fellow Shapers in Palestine. Initiatives like Shaper Aid, where we are allowing people to donate and to help build back better. So it starts with this, but then it starts with a collective responsibility of every single person. To see how they can contribute, to see how they can support entrepreneurship, how we can support building back better. And Palestinian entrepreneurs, as you have said, have been the most creative globally. And so that is something we're very proud of. And we hope that this situation ends soon.
Inshallah. Okay, so on Wasl, and then we'll move to you, Anne-Laure, for the next question on kind of how we create that ecosystem, successful ecosystem for social innovation. Before that, I want to ask you about Wasl, because that's something you've been working on, and part of this is that enablement of young people, vulnerable communities. Tell us more about how, through that work, you've learned more about social impact and innovation.
Absolutely. So Wasl is my baby, my biggest passion project that I've started 6 years ago, and it brings me the biggest light of my life to be able to work with youth in the region. So in Wasl, we walk the walk and we not just talk the talk. So we start with entrepreneurship education, empowering young people at an early age. So we start our flagship program, Shabbik Ubadir. We work on partnering private and public schools together for a joint learning experience where they learn how to create businesses, they learn community organizing, they learn project management, and then we help fund their businesses or their small projects so that they can learn entrepreneurship at a young age. That is one of our flagship projects, working with the younger youth. We're talking about 15 to 18 years of age. Then we work with university graduates and people between the ages of 21 and 28 to help through a mini accelerator program, teach them how to launch proper businesses, how to do feasibility studies, how to market their project, how to access funding, and then we help them access funding. Thankfully, we were able to help 93 youth access funding from financial institutions, incubations, and accelerations. So we work collectively on empowering youth through different age ranges. And one of my biggest joys is working with especially the younger youth in high school, teaching them this at an early age.
And Laura, I want to ask you about that because this idea of, teaching, equipping with skills and so forth has to come in to a wider ecosystem that allows for their success. So how do you build that ecosystem, be it in an organization or be it in the wider society, that allows for social innovation?
I think there's multiple levels of ecosystem that you need to have. And I think, I mentor and judge in a number of social incubators, but also incubators in the region. The number one challenge I find is mindset and awareness, and it's in two ways. The first thing is we are so scared of failure. I mean, it's beyond. The number of people that come, about 60% of the entrepreneurs I mentor have another job on the side. They do this as a 5 to 9 p.m. type of gig. It's hard to innovate when you have, responsibilities and another job at the same time. So I think that's one thing. And what will my dad say? Oh, me. There's always this fear, right? Awareness also that social innovation doesn't mean doing nonprofit, right? This is massive. Most of the people that I mentor start with a business idea and then we take them towards the social. How can you make this more social? Can you hire underprivileged people to be part of this? Do you want to have a focus on community building as part of your launch, for example? There's many ways to be social. People tend to have a very traditional, outdated view of, I do nonprofit, I give charity. We really have to change that mindset around that. I think if we do that, that's step number one of building and broadening the impact of what we do. Education is massive. I think also just access to the right partnerships, universities, incubators as well, which tend to be pockets in our region. How do we, scale that up? Partnerships have been a big way of doing that. And I have to say, even in Palestine, what I've seen that's really inspired me is almost all of us that are in social impact have found a way to contribute through partnerships. Entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs helping social entrepreneurs, there's really possibility for partnership, even at an individual level, for collective action. So I would say some of the things we need to work on is definitely, awareness raising around what social innovation is and changing those mindsets. And that comes through education as well. In school, we don't teach people that entrepreneurship is a cool thing. We teach them that, engineering, math, and there's a few sectors you need to work on, and we don't talk about entrepreneurship enough. So changing that from an early age, focusing on education in a way that promotes risk taking as well, and then helping to provide access to funding, access to the right partnerships, I think are the way to broaden the impact of what we're doing today.
And, when I asked you the opening question, you said youth is what you see as being the biggest driver of change, the mindset of youth being quite positive. Now you're talking about education. So if we were to pull them all together, is this something that you see as government-led? What role for the private sector to kind of, again, create this enablement? Because a lot of it, especially in our region, you would think that's really going to have to be government-led. And we see the impact when you do have government-led, be it in Saudi Arabia, be it in the UAE, and other countries, we actually see, yes, it's really led by the top.
And I think governments have switched to focus on that. I mean, the last 5 years, I've seen across most of the region, in the GCC, outside the GCC, there's changes in the curricula around, teaching entrepreneurship. It's hard to teach entrepreneurship, but teaching the basics of what you need to be able to get inspired around that through, for example, practical projects, which kids are asked to do in high school, which wasn't the case previously, but also by having young people who are 14, 15 years old actually go to workplaces, go see startups, interact with them. that has become a policy and it's broadening. So I think that's definitely a big part of the change. But the other side is also just youth having space to do that innovation. So we've started to see platforms come up through different foundations in the region, for example, where youth are encouraged to produce projects, doing hackathons, etc. That has also helped, I think. So I don't think it's only government-led. I think government builds the foundation, but it needs to be enriched by collective action from different members of the third sector, for example, and the community.
Yeah, who we have represented brilliantly
Yes,
on this
exactly,
panel.
exactly.
So May, I want to turn to you. When we talk about, again, innovation, social impact, you've spoken about Vision 2030 and the changes that we've seen in Saudi Arabia. The speed of change and the breadth and depth of it is incredible to witness. So how do you maintain that momentum? And how do you make sure that it's also inclusive? Tell us about your work, but also how we can ensure that that is inclusive.
I have to say, with the speed of change, that I have to check the papers every day to see what's changing in my country or what's happening. But my observation is that our country right now, with Vision 2030, is acting as a role model for the rest of the country. So there's the government, normally change happens like a pyramid. From the bottom, people demand change, and then the change reaches up to the top, and the change happens. For us here, I think it's an inverted pyramid where the government anticipates what they expect from the people, and they create the foundations for them, and we just follow. So, for instance, the government created a platform called Ihsan. Ihsan is a platform, or goodwill in English, and creates, allows the community to participate, allows corporations to participate, to help in donations, to provide access to people that is secure and transparent and nothing shady. So since it started a few years back, it managed to generate 7 billion riyals that went to the poor, that went to the imprisoned person's family, that went to so many things that helped the community in itself. But that also spurred some more individuals. On an individual level, the sustainability and the introductions of how do you sustain work, or how do you sustain the environment and climate change. There's a program that was developed by an individual called Tadweem, and this is trying to make fashion sustainable. And so he collects all the used clothing, they sanitize it, they clean it, they prepare it, and then they sell it for, of course, a cheaper price. But that helps also in sustaining the environment and protecting it. And for us, NUSF, the Arab Institute for Women's Empowerment, what we do is we believe that women, it's very challenging for women to advance by themselves without the support of the community. And so we work as individuals to make sure that our society, our community, who really are men and women, support me as a woman. So for instance, it's important for me that my father supported me as I went into college. My husband supported me as I found a job. My brother was always a shoulder to cry on. And even the farther you go away from the cities, the son has influence over his mother. So this is a role that we all have to address as a society. Not only that, then you have the mother, the grandmother, the auntie, they all have an influential role on women. So what we do, we wanted to make sure that the whole society contributes to women's advancement. So we have a podcast called Nus Voices, where we talk about social barriers that get in the way of women's advancement. We talk about our taboos, our success stories, our setbacks, whatever it is. And by the way, we don't claim to have any answers. We just put it out there. Once we acknowledge it, the shift will happen by itself. So these are some examples that we feel are creating that shift within the country and globally, because really the largest demographic globally, not only in Saudi Arabia, are millennials, are Gen Zs. And really, these people are tech savvy, they are change makers, and I'm just so excited for the future.
It's really interesting what you said about society and how society can hold back change. And so part of it is raising awareness, and Laura spoke about mindsets and so forth. So you've got the awareness raising, but there's also the role modeling. And how much have you seen that now people see all these changing, the role models that are emerging?
Well, let me tell you this. I worked in Aramco for 30 years, and I never had a mentor. In fact, I didn't even know what mentorship meant. And there was a gentleman who had really impressive business ethics, so I just followed what he was doing. But then I realized, why don't women have mentors? And this is where we created a Walk the Talk program where we identify senior executive women, and we match them with 50 young professionals just entering the job market. Because I'm from Al Khobar, on the Corniche, we put hand in hand, we allow them match one-on-one, and they go and walk for an hour or an hour and a half. Because I mentored around 70 women, they all come to my office. It was a very formal setting, and you lose the spontaneity. And with the walking, first of all, there's exercise, there's release, there's fresh air, and then they get to be casual with themselves. And you know what these senior executive women says? We were so busy. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to give back. And the young ladies would say, well, it's very hard to reach somebody at a higher level. So there's always the secretary getting in the way, and so it's impossible. So when you create that space for both to participate, I think everybody wins.
It's great. Okay, so I'm going to give you all an opportunity to ask questions to our speakers. Otherwise, we can keep talking amongst ourselves here. So please indicate if you'd like to ask a question, and I will come to you. We have a shy group here. All right, I'll come back. Oh, yes. Okay, please. Yes, go ahead. Thank you. If you could kindly identify yourself.
I'm Abdul Karim. I work as an HR for developing youth and building new capabilities and capacities for the Libyan market. So the problem that we have in most of the Arab countries nowadays that the oil sector is overstaffed. So have you ever come across some ideas that how to change people from one market to another? Because basically just sending people at home without having something that can be productive of is a little bit of a challenge. So have you ever came across an idea that starting something from scratch, that building people and driving this, because this is a very big challenge when we talk about mass.
Thank you very much. Anne-Laure, do you want to start?
Yes, sure. So I think it's important to note that 20 years ago, our skills lasted 15 to 20 years. Today, it's 2 to 5 years, depending on the sector. So your shelf life of the skills is changing all the time, and reskilling is becoming part of the conversation, even in the same sector, right? Let alone moving to another sector. There's 2 things I've seen that have been really effective in doing what you're talking about, one of which I personally designed in a couple of countries in the social sector. One thing is the development of bridge programs. So taking people who are either unemployed or whose skills don't fit the organizations that they work in anymore, and essentially doing a reskilling program to move them to another sector where there was a need for jobs. That has worked, very well. I think we've seen above 90% adoption in terms of employment within 6 months of the program ending. And these are not long programs. The programs we were looking at were taking people from the medical field to the social workers field, as an example. And we had, it was, I think, a total of 2.5 months or something in terms of length. So that can happen quite quickly as well, depending on the skills and the needs. The second one is looking at better job matchmaking, essentially. And I think there's a lot around AI there and how it's shifting the matching of job profiles. The most basic sense is looking at the skills you need in one sector and the skills you have and doing that mapping, which some governments are doing today actively. But what we're starting to see with AI is it goes beyond the skills. It goes into your mindset, your personality. So there's a lot around, of course, psychometric testing, but beyond that, what are your, behaviors and preferences in terms of work to ensure better matching. That has also been quite successful in the pilots that have been conducted recently in the region. So I think there's definitely ways to upskill and reskill people to different sectors based on the needs.
Great, thank you, sure. تفضلي.
My view is I also think that companies, corporations should monitor what the changes are happening, especially among the youth, and adjust. For example, there are a lot of people that I know that feel like they want to be part of the change in the country. They want to be decision makers as well. They want to be creating an impact, and they don't get that opportunity. There's so many layers. And for us, when we were in Aramco, it was a 7-to-4 job. Right now, you find youth working in a coffee shop at 12 o'clock at midnight and working, and then you come to the office and you see an impact of information that they have provided you. So we really have to reflect on what kind of a work environment do we want to do. The youth, those who are entering the job market in hordes, they want to make an impact. They want to create a legacy. For a lot of us, we worked to put food on the table. For them, they want to create an impact for their country, for themselves, for their families, and so we should allow that.
Lynn.
All right, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to start with a statistic. So 1 in 2 social enterprises is led by women, compared to women CEOs that are leading Fortune 500 companies are only 10%. So this number, when we take a look at it, just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, wouldn't have been something that is possible or that you would have seen now. So one thing, if you want to look at transitioning people from one type of job to another, I think you need to look at 2 things. First thing is creating awareness on the jobs that are currently present, what those development in those jobs looks like, etc., and then incentivizing them to make that career shift. Because if they don't know what is waiting for them, what they can change towards, they will not make that change, and a lot of people don't know. And that's one thing I also do is I have a company called Mihnati Portal. And what we do at Mihnati is we focus on jobs of the future, such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, big data, all these different things, and we create awareness on those jobs. What do these jobs actually look like? What are the economic impacts of these jobs? We connect people on the platform with mentors that work in these fields. So a lot of the time, this works on, first of all, allowing youth to understand what jobs are out there, and also allowing career shifters to understand, yes, I'm doing this, there's no, potential in this moving forward, what can I do? Where are these jobs? So it's creating awareness and incentives for them to make those shifts.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't know if we have, yes, please, gentleman here.
Mohammed Kafaji, Faisal University in Riyadh. Being a professor in academia, there's a oh, stand up. Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry. Yes. There's a trend, a global trend, which accredit universities based on their societal impact. Now, while universities are very good in innovation and entrepreneurship, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Well, I claiming to be doing. But most of the time, we are sort of shy of reaching out to the society, say, what can we do for you? Now, my question to you is to reverse, say, what the community, what the industries and other sectors doing to bridge that gap. Most of the professors, they do their normal job day to day, teach lessons and do some research, publish, and they go home and then holiday, and then we repeat the same thing over and over again. Somehow we need to break that cycle. So bring the education closer with more tangible societal impact. We cannot do it well, I'm sorry to admit this, but academia doesn't always push to do that. Maybe it works if you push us or you come closer to us to bridge the gap and improve our societal impact.
Liam, do you want to?
Yeah. So I think like bridging the gap between the real world and basically, or the job market and education systems, it lies with companies such as mine, like Mihnati portal, which I was saying. So when youth, this portal, basically it provides three main services, like I said, where you promote what these jobs are actually like on the ground. You promote what the development in these different jobs looks like, how much money they can make, where these jobs are provided, and you connect them with mentors. So when you're looking at bridging the gap between academia and basically the job market, you need to make that connection through the private sector, through companies like Mihnatis that can connect people to this.
Maybe just two small additions. I think one is there are examples of universities that embed the need for social innovation within their outcomes, as you said, and we see that, for example, AUC out of Cairo has classes where students and professors who are also practitioners have to do social impact projects in order to succeed in the class or things like that. So I think there's ways also to embed it more effectively within the system. And the last thing I was going to say is we talked a lot about social enterprise, but let's not forget there's so many actors in social innovation, right? The philanthropy space is doing a lot right now within social innovation. We've seen 500,000 new ultra high net worth individuals coming into the region and starting to do philanthropy. How are they doing it? Through different, new means of giving, through partnerships, for example, or donor-assisted funds. There's a lot of new structures around social innovation, and some of them include academia actually as part of it. So I think creating those bridges and connections between the different stakeholders is really critical, because social enterprise is a powerful means, but it is not the only way that we're seeing change happen at the moment in the social space.
Also, I want to add that we have a pillar called research, where we identify where the gaps are for Saudi women in the labor market and beyond, and we make recommendations for companies what they should do to close these gaps. So,
Could you make those
maybe-
recommendations to
And so
universities?
maybe we could work with universities as well to have that collaboration where we can add value to the community.
So we're sadly running out of time, so I have a couple of questions, and I want you to please answer briefly so I can get to my second question. So my first question is, give us an example of one social impact innovation you've seen. Doesn't necessarily have to be one that you've carried out, but one that you've seen in the last 5 years that you thought, that's a good example of success, that could either be scaled up or you think that's a good example, in addition to the great work you've done. So, May.
Okay, so I've just talked about the Sustainable Climate Change Initiative, TDWEEM. That's an impressive one, because we are a large purchasing power in Saudi Arabia, a big market, so people tend to buy. We're consumers. And so that's a shame that we don't find ways to recycle it. And I think this initiative is an outstanding one. We should do more of it.
I think one social innovation that's inspired me, and I've seen work quite well, is creating outcome-based contracts between governments in the social sector and non-profit organizations or third sector. There's a tendency in a region for the government to do a lot. So looking at how government can work with third sector players through clear outcomes and impact measurements to actually empower them to deliver on the change without the government doing everything, I think there's a lot of potential there.
So there's three that have inspired me, but I'm going to capitalize on one specifically. So we're talking about renewable energy, telemedicine, and the circular economy. These are three terminologies that have really inspired me in the last decade. But focusing more on telemedicine, we have a wonderful initiative and a wonderful company in Jordan called At-Tibbi. And it's being run by a Schwab social innovator called Jalil Al-Labadi. And basically what they provide is they provide healthcare or access to healthcare online for people that cannot afford it, and for people in marginalized communities and in vulnerable groups. So this is wonderful. In COVID, it was a big help. It's initiatives like these that allow us to reach markets in diverse communities, to access talent pools that were previously untapped, and to broaden supplier networks.
That's great. That's a very good example. Oh, okay, we have a delayed question, but we will come to you. Please, lady in the front.
Actually, it's another source of example and also build up on what you were saying.
If you could stand, please, and identify
Yes,
yourself.
for sure.
Thank you.
So my name is Malak. I am the founder of a social enterprise called the Volunteer Circle. We're based out of Lebanon. We really take care of all the processes that turn volunteering from a haphazard process into a tangible, measurable, outcome-based process. And I think that volunteers, when they volunteer with their skills, today we have 7 out of 8 people who prefer to volunteer with their skills, are a huge source of social innovation and breaking the cycle of underemployment. So in terms of unemployment and underemployment, as you said, Anne, we are talking about the shelf life of skills that doesn't last. And when you're on the ground volunteering, you're building the timeless skills that all employers are looking for. And these are backed by reports by the World Economic Forum as well. And in terms of entrepreneurship, how to create our own opportunities, right, as you were saying, Glenn, when you're volunteering, volunteers on the front line have access to the most pressing challenges. And I've seen more than 90 stories out of 2,000 just the past year in the volunteer circle transition from volunteering to impact enterprises with a sustainable business model. And this, for me, is a big thing. I wrote an article about 6 ways volunteering makes you a better entrepreneur on the WEF agenda. And we also work with educators to push for a framework that truly matches all our trends and how to make social impact an outcome-based component in curricula.
Thank you.
So I think this is an example as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. A good example to keep in mind. Okay, so very briefly, what gives you hope when it comes to social innovation looking to the future? May.
I'm already seeing it right now with this youth movement all over the world. I have to say, they're all tech savvy, they're all united. The gender disparity is changed. I mean, they're just supportive. They work anywhere. And so I look forward for them to be our future leaders. In fact, our Crown Prince is a millennial.
I would say seeing models that don't exist anywhere else or that, are completely disruptive emerge here is something that is giving me hope. Seeing that the government is now adjusting because it's seeing youth call for crowdsourcing, crowd giving, volunteering in a different way, seeing the governments in the region adjust their laws for that, that's giving me hope because youth, again, is the driver of change, and we're seeing other stakeholders adapt to that as well.
So what gives me hope is that starting a company is not what it once was before. So now it is easier than ever, especially in countries like Riyadh. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Riyadh here, they are the biggest supporters of entrepreneurship, of youth innovation. There is so much money out there that youth can utilize, so many resources, so many capacity building programs. So now is the time. Now is the time to start your own company. There are so many people out there willing to help you, and the world is changing.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, it was interesting that we started our session with May saying that COVID and the pandemic were an incredible kind of motivator and got people thinking in a different way, despite, of course, the many setbacks and the terrible loss of life. So that was an interesting start to our conversation as we then inevitably spoke about the power and the sheer charge and momentum of young people across the region. Of course, here in Saudi Arabia with Vision 2030, we're seeing how that can be utilized and taking that youth and dynamism to go in a very targeted way, but then also in other parts of the region. We spoke at length and importantly on those who need to be included and making sure that we think about social impact also not just as nonprofit, and to your point, Lean, that you ended on, that companies now can be set up and you can think about that. And we just had the great example from our participant here, Malak, who thought about, okay, well, actually you see people volunteering and then they think this can become a business idea. Importantly, we spoke about, of course, the devastation that's happening in Gaza, but also thinking about in conflict zones, it's a different conversation. And we still have to find the possibility of good news, but also the possibility of actually changing the dynamic by enabling people. Importantly, reskilling, building bridges, the role of academia, role modeling, hugely important. So as you go about your everyday, think about the social impact you're having, and I hope that you took away some of these pearls of wisdom from our panel. Please thank them, and thank you for being here.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you.